by the way, if you're watching on YouTube and are a Commanders fan, DC sports fan on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to JP Finley's channel. He puts up a ton of his content from his reporting work with us, of course, at 106.7 The Fan, where he hosts B. Mitch and Finley, NBC4 as well. And he joins us here on the Hoffman Show. JP, what's up, man? How are you?
Hoff, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Doing well. So I have avoided on my show talking about the Belichick thing forever because I thought it was silly, and then there's now enough serious people talking about it that I feel like it needs to be addressed and talked about, and we can do the topic, if you will. What have you heard? Just, you're so well connected. You hear scuttlebutt around here, around there. What have you heard about the possibility of Belichick being brought to Washington in some capacity?
So I heard, from a source and reported a few weeks ago that there was no truth to this. And I felt very strongly about that. And the only thing I would remind people there is I was the first person to say Josh Harris's name, and that proved pretty strong. But that said, some time has passed, and is a very large ownership group, and we know and we believe that somebody somewhere talked to Sean Payton. Sean Payton said somebody talked to him about it. So I don't think you can rule anything 100% out. However, it would run pretty contrary to how this group has built other teams, the Sixers and the Devils. Not that they went and hired Doc Rivers. Like, they're not scared to pay big money coaches, but the coaches are never in charge of personnel and like the whole operation. And I mean, perhaps that's not what Bill wants to do, but I find it hard that he would want to relinquish power or whatever. I tend to still think this is a whole bunch of smoke, but like you said, I mean, it is coming from more and more places and does seem to be getting more and more interesting. But I know definitively, I mean, I'd have to check my Twitter when I reported. Whenever the initial Florio report came out,
right,
I checked with someone and was told there's no truth to that.
So that leads to a couple of interesting follow-ups. But I think the most important one is, how does this ownership group work, right? Like, it's so big, like you said, and different people know different people. I think it's interesting that Breer notes the relationship between Josh Harris and Jonathan Kraft. Obviously, Albert's very plugged in on the New England side of things. It's where he lives, up in the Boston area. So maybe this is something that's coming from the Patriots or the Belichick side. I kind of hate mostly playing the who's your source game, especially as a former reporter. I hated when people did that to me. But I think it's just worth mentioning kind of in passing here. But to the crux of the question, JP, like, how much is of the next head coaching decision will be Josh Harris's versus Josh Harris getting input from Mitchell Rales, Magic Johnson, and on down the list?
I think one name we don't say enough, Harris, Rales, but Blitzer, too. I mean, Blitzer's in on the other teams with him. And I think, a lot of I kind of think the nerve center of this organization still runs through HBSE, like the Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment Group. So I would think that's a lot. But, I don't have that answer, but I think Josh Harris doesn't strike me as a dude that is the runner-up in the homecoming dance. Like, I think he's in charge. I think there's a collaborative approach here, and you want to hear from everybody, and there's a lot of people with a lot of smarts and a lot of experience. But, I think we'll learn over time. But, like, I know that at the owners' meetings, like, the person with the vote is Harris. And that, to me, I mean, think about the Giants, right? I mean, the Tisch family owns 49% of that thing. And there's a bunch of Maras. I think John Mara has 3 or 4 brothers and sisters. Like, there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, but, like, John makes the calls, I think people enter into these types of agreements, and maybe we've never seen something with this many people that isn't a family, right? But, like a typical matriarchal thing. But I think it's Harris's operation with input from lots of places, but Harris's operation.
Yeah, no, I think that tracks. And I think that, Harris strikes me as the kind of guy that will ask a lot of questions, take in a lot of people's opinions, and then he makes the decision. And I think that's where it becomes interesting about like a Belichick thing and I'm picking a name here. I'm going to pick the splashiest name because it's the first one that came to mind. It's just a coincidence. Nobody read anything into this. I do not know a damn thing. But like if Magic Johnson is like, it's Bill Belichick, I want Bill Belichick. Like how does Harris play into that, or how does he process that versus other people and his own original thoughts and, anybody that he's consulting? And I think that's an interesting thing too. Like he doesn't, as far as we know, or I should say, we don't know who he's consulting on football things, but I think you'd have to be pretty naive to think that he doesn't have people that he's met through his ownership of the Steelers and throughout his life generally, and obviously over the last couple of months, that he's consulting on these kinds of things. So I don't know. There's not really a question there. I just think it's going to be interesting to see how they do this. And also, we kind of skipped to the coach part. They're probably going to make a GM hire, a football executive hire of some kind as well.
Well, dude, I try to keep reminding myself they already have. If you read the press release on Eugene Shen, he's the senior vice president of football strategy. And if this is an analytical organization going forward, that dude is an executive. And then Ron talked about his help or role at the trade deadline, and I think we got to keep that in mind. I don't know. To your point about Magic, you've got a guy that's kind of like a consummate champion, and if he is saying, hey, we got to try this, maybe you should consider it, clearly. But I don't think we know enough. This strikes me as, all signs point to one thing, but the people that really know what's going on are like, I know, I'm guessing you too. I know, in the weeks that lead up to free agency, sometimes the reports all point at something, and then you talk to the agent or somebody closely involved. They're like, yeah, that's total nonsense.
Right.
I don't know that this is that, but I don't know that it isn't either. Dude, what I know on a personal level as somebody that watches this and tries to learn and speak on what I know, I don't think it's the right fit.
Well, I wanted to ask you that next. Let's now take JP Finlay, if you somehow don't recognize the voice, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, host of B. Mitch and Finlay, Washington Commanders insider for NBC4. And I'm going to have you take your reporter NBC4 hat off and put your talk show hat back on for the day. Pull out your Odyssey badge and clock in here with an opinion on Belichick for the Commanders. Is this something that they should even want in the first place?
No, I don't think so. Respecting his incredible resume and legacy and career, no. Outside of Tom Brady, the quarterback evaluation has been awful. The roster construction has largely been awful. No, man. And I think as the years go on in the Brady-Belichick divorce, in the post-Brady-Belichick divorce, sure looks like Tom was the more important cog in that machine. Maybe not early on, but I continue to circle back to, if you are in New England and you're a Pats fan or you're involved with the Patriots, you don't want to have to fire Tom Brady. So you really, really want him to be traded, or just so that there's some other resolution, some other finality to this relationship other than, yeah, Florida State had to fire Bobby Bowden. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's the same thing. This very much feels to me like the end of a college coach that's had an incredible career.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because you don't see this in the pros.
Yeah, and I also agree with you. I started off the show talking about this, and not only it does not feel like the right fit, but if you think of the fact that he's 71 and you're going to want some kind of succession plan, he's got one of the worst coaching trees that's ever existed in the NFL to have this many branches on it. It's like all you got is a bunch of fallen branches. You never had literally a single dude who was successful as a head coach coming off this coaching tree. and where you've got the Shanahan, McVay, Gruden, whatever amalgamation, Washington 2013 coaching staff. Oh, look, there's that picture again, coaching tree that's got a bunch of successful branches, perched up around the league. I'd much rather go off of not just that tree necessarily, but like that football philosophy, which is mirrored in a guy like a Ben Johnson in Detroit or a Bobby Slowick in Houston, who's obviously directly off of it. But kind of that way seems to be where things are going. And that also seems to match, frankly, what Josh Harris likes to do.
And what the young quarterback that is somewhere between proving he's a starter in this league to proving he's a damn good starter in this league would want. Like innovative, young, offensive mind, or you keep Bieniemy, and I don't know their relationship whatsoever. I got to assume they know each other and have for years, but like, where does Bieniemy fit in with Belichick? Hey, dude, not to mention Ron and Belichick are close friends. Like, they've been friends for a while. I believe Ron has told this story publicly, but when Ron got his cancer diagnosis, Belichick was one of the first few people to call and check on him. So, like, is that how this is going down? Like, I don't know, man. Like, whenever people talk about, they should have fired Gruden and hired McVay,
right,
they ignore the fact that McVay wouldn't have taken the job because he wouldn't have done that to Jay.
Right. Something I've brought up a million times, and people look at you dumbfounded, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you forgot these are video game characters with no feelings or no humanity, except for the fact that they're not. And that's not how this works. JP Finley's with us here on the Hoffman Show. Speaking of that quarterback, away from the coaching stuff, in terms of the what's next to the right now, one of the narratives that has come up very loudly, I feel like this week, as Ron has continued to just beat the Sam Howell drum every place he can possibly beat it, is the idea that they've been so pass heavy to get Sam extra reps, and that his rapid development the last couple of weeks is due to this massive, literally unprecedented amount of reps. As Ben Standig, our friend, wrote about this week in The Athletic, they're on pace to be the most pass-happy team since the year 2000, which is as far back as whatever database he was looking in goes. I think the True Media database. And I think that's silly. I think that you don't have to be this far one way, that these extra 70 reps that also resulted in a bunch of sacks or whatever the number is, didn't actually help Sam more than just running a good, solid 2023 fairly pass-heavy offense. Where do you come down on that, though, in terms of how the way they've run things this year has helped versus optimized Sam's development?
That seems like really trying to spin something. I don't buy it. I think NFL coaches coach to win games, and that's all they care about and are consumed by, and that's why they sleep in their offices. The notion of development in the NFL is Frank Reich, right, was brought in to develop Bryce Young. I'd say there's a 50-50 shot he's getting fired because they don't win. I just... and if that it really is, we just wanted to throw everything at him so he'd come out the other side better. Did he get better in that first Giants game?
Right.
I don't think so. To me, it's a pretty flawed argument. I think it's a convenient way to look at perhaps some bad game plans early on, honestly. Perhaps it's true. I don't know that's not the case. It would just run contrary to most of what I've seen from NFL coaches for a decade.
No, I totally, and that's the thing that kind of irks me to an extent. I know it's funny because I think there's probably been times when it's like, no, this is actually the right play and the best thing for the organization. Why haven't certain seasons more or less been thrown away in the name of development? But in the NFL, I've never, ever heard a coach say oh, well, this or that doesn't matter. That could help us win more because this player is developing, even if it is a young quarterback. I cannot believe Rivera keeps going back to saying this out loud.
Dude, if that is the situation, that they had him throw so much to develop him, why on earth did he not play more last year? And so it's completely contradictory, but we hear plenty of completely contradictory things. I've heard that it's EB's plan to have him throw so much so that, they can then settle down and know what Sam is and know if that's the future. I find that hard to believe. Isn't EB's plan to win games? So he either gets this head coaching job or the next one? I think they threw the ball a ton because they think that's the way to win. And if the kid gets developed along the way, terrific.
Yeah, and I think that they've probably gone overkill on that, but that's a different conversation for a different time. What kind of pressure? I typically hate these questions, but we're at a point in the season, and considering what the Giants are, this feels like an actual real version of it. What kind of pressure is on them to win this weekend?
Doc Walker, I think, has said it the best. He was on with us earlier this week, and he said, if they lose to the Giants, it's the apocalypse. And I mean,
that Doc Walker is so understated. I really wish he'd just come out and say something every once in a while,
I mean, dude, if they lose this weekend, they're 4-7. They're 0-4 in the division, and they've got Dallas and Miami coming up. Like, but dude, I've been saying this. I don't think they're going to lose. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win kind of big. I think they can kind of get this Giants thing off their back, and a lot of it is a factor of just how bad I think the Giants are right now.
Yeah, it feels. What was the Dallas game a couple years ago where Dallas was beat to hell and the Commanders just finally came out and killed them? And you're like, thank you, finally. That's what this weekend feels like to me.
Yeah. I agree.
It should. Now, Dallas on Thursday is a different story with how they're rolling right now, but we can
I think that's a really bad matchup for them.
Yeah, I think it's a bad matchup, and if I'm Ron Rivera, I'm a little bit scared, not just because of the matchup, but because there are 10 days between that and the next game, and, that's also been a time of year that he's coached his final game for an organization before, and I think we can leave that there for right now. JP Finlay, B. Mitch and Finlay, you can catch that 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. weekdays on 106.7 The Fan. JP, appreciate it, as always. Thank you, sir.
No problem. I'll talk to you later.
This is the Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.